Welcome to Chatting With, an extension of the 5GTS podcast with me, Glaswegian BR. Today, me and my friend Finn chat with Daniel Cabuco, one of the artists behind the Legacy of Kain series. Please do enjoy. Hello, I'm Glaswegian BR. This is a little video for you guys, a side thing from the usual 5GTS podcast that I do. Today I've got with me my friend Finn, and we've got with us
hello,
Daniel. Daniel? How do I pronounce your surname so I don't insult you?
Cabuco.
Daniel Cabuco, who was the art director of the Legacy of Kain games and a few others. So, hi Daniel, and thanks for gracing us with your presence as well. That's awesome.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
So first off, how's it going, dude?
It's going good. It's going good. Right now, it's just a Saturday morning here in San Diego, so I'm just having fun. I was sketching before I talk to you guys, so just painting and drawing like I usually do.
I seen you pointed out your Raziel's clan symbol there. I've got on my wall. I painted Kain's clan symbol on a cape for Halloween. Nice. I keep it there.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah, I gotta get a flag made for my stuff too. It's like I've got all this Legacy of Kain stuff I want to put up, but I just took everything down in my office because we just redid the carpets in it, so everything's in boxes right now.
Yeah.
So
it's
a lot of fun.
I didn't realize how hard freehand drawing and painting was until I did that, and it's not something I do regularly. So.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot of practice that goes into it in terms of like being able to improve your craft and things like that. But as I say, everything comes with practice.
Awesome. Well, so I'm gonna fire into a couple of questions that I want to bounce off you. When you obviously. I think was Soul Reaver the first project you did with Crystal Dynamics?
Yes. Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I joined Crystal Dynamics in 97, 98 after I worked at Novologic, working on various advanced military systems. Because another thing I like is actually military vehicles and especially like Army, Navy, and those kinds of things. I studied those for a while too. So I enjoyed making those kind of games. I worked on Comanche and Armored Fist, and then I think that I believe that's winter break. I left Novologic, moved up from Southern California, Northern California, and joined Crystal Dynamics in Palo Alto.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's really cool. Actually, that's some backstory there that I didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah. I used to play role-playing games when I was younger, and like one of them we used to play was Twilight 2000. So I used to know all about like the kind of military Russian vehicles and stuff like that were used in like hypothetical World War III scenarios. So
I remember that game actually. I haven't thought about that in years.
Yeah, there's no when they say there's no wasted information, it's true, because all the information that I learned from that game I brought with me when I went to Novologic. It's something I knew what a BMPB was, and then I knew what a Huey attack helicopter looked like, and I knew what the Apache, had, and all those kind of things like that. So it was fun to be able to transfer that knowledge over. And that's kind of a recurring theme for me, is like all the stuff I thought was useless knowledge actually translates over into everything you create in video games.
Awesome.
Is it like at the time you didn't know it was useless knowledge, but it just sort of came out like, oh yeah, I learned that and it became useful. I like when things like that happen.
I learned tons of stuff in D&D that I applied to Legacy of Kain, so it's really interesting.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. It sparked your knowledge of like medieval warfare and the way they built things in castles and things like that, and just a love of architecture, which we also brought to Soul Reaver as well.
That actually does bring me to a question I had about Soul Reaver. Just a quick bit of background. I'm an archaeology student myself.
Oh, cool.
And one of the things I especially really appreciate, obviously I started playing Legacy of Kain games when I was quite young. I can't remember how old I was when Legacy of Kain came out, but I started playing them about 10. So it's before I...
It always surprises me when people tell me they played that game when they're like 9 or 10 years old. I'm like, what?
I had to replay it, to be fair, to get it, to be honest. But it was a thesaurus effort a lot of the time.
I was 5.
Sure, yeah.
I was 5.
One of the things...
Wow, really? 5?
Yeah, I was...
You're 5?
That was it was the first PlayStation game I ever got off of my mother for Christmas when we got the console, so I sort of... I was raised playing through Soul Reaver 1 before and after school. And then,
that is amazing.
And then again, when the sequels would come out, it'd be every year, Mum, can I get Soul Reaver 2, please? It's out now. I'd love that.
Wow.
And actually, the Legacy of Kain games, specifically the way they were written, and that helped lay the foundations for me passing my English exams.
Really? That's amazing, man. That's cool to hear. I'm glad we were able to contribute something positive.
No, definitely. One of the things...
Said I interrupted you there.
Yeah, one of the things I always really appreciated about the design of it was that there was a huge amount of continuity, not just between the time periods about how things decay, but between the architecture of the individual cultures. Like, I felt that you could see a vampire rune from a human one to an ancient's one to something that was influenced from this culture and that. Was that inspired by anything particular from you, or is that just a love of architecture, as you said before?
Yeah, I mean, we made a very conscious and distinctive choice to make every architecture slightly different between, like, even different clans and between the vampires and the humans. Kain, who was at the apex of all of that stuff, was supposed to, have the Arabic designs because that's the most advanced architecture of that time.
Oh, I was thought it was the sort of Eastern Roman Empire vibe.
If you look at his throne room, it's actually got Arabic arcs in it, Arabic arches in it. But yeah, it's sort of that same kind of vibe. And one thing that was cool was that a lot of the environment artists on the game were from architectural backgrounds, so they actually knew what they were talking about when they were making certain designs and stuff. Whether it was like a temple from Cambodia, or whether it was a design from Eastern European, or whether it was Northern or wherever it came from. A lot of the architecture students already knew the background, so they knew we were consciously applying differences to it. And we had a lot of freedom in that respect, in that Amy would come up and talk to us and kind of freeball and freeform some of that stuff and say, well, I want it to be different. Could we try this architecture? And you'd be like, yeah, sure. And then we just do it. A lot of us who didn't know about it would go and research it and find abandoned places and look at, ruins and things like that, and aqueducts and just ancient Roman places. So it was cool to see like the different designs of all those places. And within the context of what PlayStation 1 could do, was really interesting to be able to apply that information and try to get that across as best we could.
Yeah, I can imagine the hardware limitations were quite hard to work around, especially in that era of gaming.
Well, the PlayStation 1, we had 4 megs of VRAM. So you could see all the textures for the room you were in, the room you were about to go in, and the room you just left behind, all on one page.
Yeah.
That's something I want to bring up. When you're saying with the hardware limitations and how much of the RAM you had to work with, it wasn't just one version of the art direction you had to have streaming on the disc. You also had the Spectral Realms version 2. How did you guys work around that? That always really amazed me, the mechanic of shifting.
Yeah, so it was really an amazing thing. We had a huge limitation that people at the time were really blown away what we were able to accomplish. So the technology was set up as such that usually in like an old school PlayStation 1 game, you had all the textures loaded for the entire level at one time. So you had 4 megs spread across an entire level, which is why you had all repetitive texture and stuff like that. Well, we did a thing where we only had, like I said, the room you're in, the room you're going to go into with the hallway, and the room you're leaving behind in memory, and everything else was kind of either in garbage collection or being loaded up. And as long as that was the case, what we did was we decided consciously not to put too much color to each texture, because each texture, if it was full RGB, would take up too much information. It would take up like 3 times the information of a single plate of text of color. So instead of having RGB colors on all things, we color reduced every single texture down to 4-bit, which is roughly 1632 color kind of combinations. And with such a reduction in texture color, you obviously they would look really like either super like monochromatic. But the advantage was that you could have beautiful, you can get rid of pixelation. You paint to like this beautiful black and white almost painting. And then we use what's called vertex colors. We use the vertex colors. You could assign a color to every vertex. And so we found out that with, since PlayStation did polygons way better than it did textures, we decided to put the color responsibility onto the hardware for doing the polygon. So there's vertex coloring. So we're able to subtly shift things. It's like, beautiful reds for the bricks, some very nice subtle browns. As long as we kept it within a certain range of nature, then it actually looked really, really good. And then what we would do is with spectral, and this is a really difficult thing. In fact, I think Amy said that if the engineers knew how hard this was, they wouldn't have done it. But basically what happened, we have an A to B. Morphing is actually A to B. So basically you would have this storage, we'd store all this information in a single vertex where you'd basically be able to take the world and kind of go between these A to B morph targets. So all you would do is you'd like slide something over. You wouldn't add any more polygons or take away any more polygons. Stuff could unfold and stuff could come out of stuff, but stuff couldn't go completely be deleted or added. So all you could do is like morph one shape to another as long as it has the same number of vertices and shape order was the same, or the vertex order was the same. And then what we would do is we would shift the vertex colors from like whatever the blues or the reds or whatever the natural colors were to the greens and the blues of the spectral realm. And then on top of that, we had what's called VMO, which is basically this kind of it's kind of like a color undulation matrix that's added on top of the values for the vertices, so we could actually have them kind of undulate back and forth like there's water around you or something like that. That was basically how the technology worked.
I'm saying damn because it's actually seriously impressive how the user overcame the limitations to actually make that work, and it shows as well because it looked absolutely brilliant when you were shifting those realms and seeing the different shades.
I was really proud of the team. It was super clever, and I think once we had the technology going, our minds just exploded with what we could do. We suddenly felt like we could create really detailed levels that relied more on the textures to show detail but not color. So we basically would paint these beautiful black and white images, almost black and white, somewhat monochromatic, crunch it down to 16 colors, and then give it subtle vertex colors to give it the real like depth and life that it needed. And it worked perfect for somehow. And the PlayStation One looked great. So we're like, this works.
It did work amazingly. And no word of a lie, legitimately, the spectral realm used to give me nightmares as a child.
Oh, really?
I used to worry I'd accidentally shift while walking along. Because of that kind of morphing effect, it felt so real, but not. Like, it had a sort of like non-Euclidean Lovecraftian kind of vibe that genuinely just stuck with me.
Those were some of our influences. Lovecraft was a great influence for myself and for some of the artists we had. Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. There's like all kinds of beautiful artistic black and white expressionistic movies that are great for that because they're psychological. Even if you watch them today, they'll still freak you out.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. It's that kind of thing that stands the test of time, I feel, which is one of the most impressive things about the series is it has stood so well over time. It's aged far better than a lot of its PS1 contemporaries.
Oh yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. No, it's a really testament to the team and what we were able to accomplish because we were able to just focus on one little area at a time instead of trying to spread the texture memory across an entire level like you would for any of those PlayStation 1 games. We get to focus on just a very specific room at a time, and because we were able to do that, we were able to put all of our detail, all of our love and craftsmanship into one small area at a time, and just get it looking as nice as we could, and move on to the next area. So it was a real for the people who worked on it. It was a real like partnership because we had one guy that was doing the modeling and one guy that was doing the texturing, and that was like generally the teamwork that we had for it. But they had to work really well together too. It wasn't like when it throws you a model and you're done. You have to go back to them and say, hey, could you model this out or that out? Good enough polygons. And then they would make a rough approximation of it, and then you would like spend all your time painting to make sure that it looked almost like a lot more detailed than it really was because we didn't have normal maps back then. So we would just focus on making the illusion of light and things like that on it as well.
How long did it take for the entire game to? I know it's actually from what I'm hearing with all the cuts, it wasn't actually a full-on complete story and product like it was intended to be. But and especially with its rough start of originally being a game called Shifter and then being thrust into the Legacy of Kain universe. So with all of that included, how long did it take the game to initially be released? I
believe from inception to actual publication, it was about a 4-year cycle, 4 or 5 year cycle, just depending on like who you talked to about when they were working on it. I came in kind of like in the middle. When I came in, you know, they were still shifting over to the Legacy of Kain side of it from Shifter. So they had the initial technology set up and some of the team, you know, already like laid in, but a lot of the characters weren't designed yet. And you know, that was kind of where I really was able to shine, was the character designs and being able to get in there and actually paint the characters too. I had brought in a technique that I'd learned at Novalogic on again the game that was canceled over there, on how to make characters look really, really good with, you know, only a few textures, and to bring it to be able to stretch it across. Like, I think we had, each character was like 700 polygons only, so we had to make it work with 700 polygons as opposed to, like, you know, the 700 polygons we use for like nose hairs now in games.
Yeah. The elbow texture.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just ridiculous how much memory we have now, and we're still crying for more. But yeah, it was about that long. The last year was a complete year of crunch, where it was like 6 or 7 days a week for a year, to the point where when the game finished, I just didn't know what to do with my weekends. I actually like kind of walked out of it in a daze. It's like I don't know what to do now. My day's not structured. I have an open day. It's really weird.
You were like drawing Raziel in your sleep after this.
You know, it was funny because like I was drawing Raziel in my sleep, and I was drawing Kain in my sleep, because I've been designing those kind of. It was one of those really fortunate things where the aesthetic of Legacy of Kain actually fit into my aesthetic of what I really like to do. It fit with, like, I loved vampires and monsters, and then, you know, imagine the thing you like to do the most, someone coming up to you and saying, whatever it is, the thing you like to do the most, we'll pay you to do it. And you're like, okay, I'll do that. So, you know, I just like drawing vampires and drawing monsters and things like that. So I was really lucky to have the opportunity to be able to apply my aesthetic to it and have it actually work for the game and be something that really took off. You know, it's just something that just fit just right. And I think that's a testament to the other artists as well, as their styles were really great too. The other, you know, environment artists and the other animators and stuff like that were able to really put a bit of themselves into it and really make it shine.
On the subject of talking about character design, that does lead me to another question I wanted to ask. You've probably been asked this one a lot, though, to be fair. Do you have a particular favourite that was your favourite to design or your favourite to work with, for any reason?
I sort of have two. The first one's Kain. He was like just my favorite to work on, and the other one would be the fallen version of Duma, because I was able to design the helmet and stuff like that, and all of the armor and stuff, and get that really together. So those two are really my favorites for the ones I was able to design.
I think, to me, Duma was the coolest looking one, because he was the one that scared me the least as a child.
It's funny because, yeah, people say he didn't scare him, but some people say it was the most scary because he chased you around and you couldn't get rid of him.
Yeah, I didn't like the following. It scared me. I don't know.
Yeah, I could deal with that. It's just, I mean, having the image of specifically Zephon in my head for quite a number of months after playing it, like, Zephon was terrifying. Freaking spider embedded in the wall.
It was always the Elder God that scared me. I was glad.
Right.
I was kind of glad by the end of Defiance when he was evil, because I was like, okay, good, so I'm kind of justified here now.
Yeah, that was the design too, because he wasn't an actual person; he was a room. So we actually got to design that one, and I really like Lovecraft. I mean, I don't want to say I was into it before everyone else was, and put on those sunglasses, but I want to say that I was really, really into him, and I wanted more people to be exposed to that level of subtle, Lovecraftian horror.
Well, that helps. It was my introduction to Lovecraft.
It was great. That's awesome. And painting the tentacles and stuff like that. And what was funny was we got to paint the tentacles in the spectral realm. And what we did was our direction was that in the material world, you'd only see like where he was like left behind, like all the marks that he left behind. Yeah. That's how he would appear to you. So basically, we had to do these really cool like designs. And there's this thing called crinids, which are basically a fossil record of like. I believe they're like tentacle organisms from prehistoric times. Yeah. And if you ever look up crinids, they're perfect like reference for the Elder Gods' markings, looking at them in the past and seeing the spirals and everything like that where they were, because they're like these spiral kind of worms. And so it was perfect for that. And it's like sticking eyes everywhere and tentacles and suction cups and all that kind of stuff. It was just a lot of fun to be able to paint that gestalt and just be able to go off on it. There were a couple of, there are a few of us that are just really weird into that stuff. So
yeah, I can understand that. The way you managed to make him feel so all-encompassing as well was good. It's like you were saying with the marks left around, and almost, I don't know, even when he wasn't there, when I looked around in the Spectral Realm and any of the games that featured, you could still feel him to a certain degree. I think that's a testament to good Lovecraftian design, to be honest.
That's part of our goal.
Yeah, it's the horror that lingers, essentially.
Yes, exactly. To me, it was this kind of same. I'm going to point to a couple of other of my favorite horror type genre games. There's a huge difference to me between like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, because Resident Evil was the one that would like jump out and go boo,
zombie.
But Silent Hill was the one that would just stick in your head, where you hear a radio static and it would slowly come up, and there's this fog, and you just be able to, all you have is a pipe, and you're like, what? What's going on? And that's the one that would stick with you, because it brought the horror levels like real slow and real like subtle. That's what we tried to do with what we did as well, is like just try to make sure that it stuck with you, and that you're a monster too, but you're in the world of monsters, and so it's like it's a hierarchy of things. It's like you're this beautiful weapon, but at the same time you're also subject to all the horrors around you, and if you're not used to that kind of stuff, you just get like freaked out, which is great. Freaked out about it.
Just when you were talking about the all-encompassing design, how you feel the Elder Gods always around you, something that in cutscenes that really like reinforced that, I think, and complemented it, was the way Tony J would deliver the character as well. It's like you hear that voice and you can still hear it while you're feeling it around you, if you understand what I mean.
I understand.
A perfect mixture that all just comes out as this really freaky undead cake.
It's pretty cool. Tony J's voice was just the perfect delivery, and I still remember him as the voice of the Haunted Mansion. So whenever or Shia Khan, so every time I hear his voice, I feel this beautiful, deep like resonance with his voice. And Michael Bell, who is just amazing for his ability to deliver just another level of audio. Another whole level of like just beautiful acting, and at the time for PlayStation 1, there's a real big divide between the kinds of voice acting you would get. Not the actors, but just like how they would write the dialogue and how they would set up the systems, and
if you play any cutscene from Soul Reaver 1 compared to one from like Resident Evil 1, it's night and day, the difference between time and attention spent on voice acting and characterization and all the audio level of things.
Yeah, exactly. And if you ever heard of a site called audioatrocities.com, they basically have like all these amazing like horrible lines from voice acting that people just phoned it in or were given horrible lines to say. And luckily, I'm really happy to say that we're not on there at all. Like, totally we're not on there, but there's a lot of like games from around that era that are, including like my favorites like Resident Evil and stuff like that. They told you a Jill sandwich, or the Master of Unlocking.
Master of Unlocking is a classic.
Yeah. Whereas when you're talking about like altruism with Seraphan, or you're talking about anything else, it's just like, wait, what's going on? This is crazy. Even I had to look up more than a few words over there. Like I think Richard Martin was the one who quoted the word scabrous wretches. And, I'm like, what the heck does that mean? Okay. I kind of just took me a while to kind of figure out what he was saying, but I understood the context of what he was saying, but not the exact meaning. So it was fun to kind of see how they're playing with language at that point.
There was this funny YouTube video a guy done where he was reviewing Soul Reaver. You might have seen it, but every time a complicated word would pop up, he'd have the dictionary definition with a clan symbol next to it, and it just worked for great comedy. He was like converting it into dictionary form. I loved it.
Oh gosh, if you guys have that link, let me send it to me, because I haven't heard. Of course, it's pretty awesome, because it's that was like one of my favorite things, was basically just the level of dialogue, the acting, and they're all great guys. Simon Templeman, he's like amazing actor, and everybody, Anna Gunn, they just put their all into it, and you can tell that they really enjoyed themselves reading this dialogue, and that they felt like they're just doing next level stuff. And it's just one of those things like, there are times I've worked in a lot of different games, but that was one of those times where I just knew I was working on something special.
Yeah.
Oh, certainly.
Because each thing would come in, like the pre-rendered Cindy would come in, or the high-res sculpt of Raziel would come in, or the audio would come in, other things that the music from Kurt, and it would just hype you up to the next level. Like, oh my god, this is amazing, yes. And because once Kurt's music started coming, we started playing that in on our headphones and just drawing and painting to that because it was just so perfect for the game. It just pumped me up, really. Like, I listen to soundtracks when I draw, so it's one of the things I absolutely love the soundtrack. And
I once listened to Kurt's the Necropolis theme on repeat while editing a video on YouTube I was doing, and I know what you mean. It clicked. It really got me in the zone.
I actually have the soundtrack on my iTunes for writing essays. Surprisingly enough, or surprisingly enough, I'm not sure which. Yeah. Actually, does lead me to another question. So, from the way you speak about it, it sounds like an extremely collaborative effort. Is that typical, do you think, of the way game design works, or was it more or less?
I think it's typical of good game design. I think when you have a good game and you talk to those people, you find out that it was highly collaborative, and people, were able to contribute at their skills, to the project and kind of join energies. Because honestly, you have to think about it like almost like a stream of water, and if you're going against it, then it has to be corrected, and that's when you have to kind of knock it into shape. But if everybody's kind of pushing in the same direction and trying to make it great and moving in the same kind of like in the stream's direction downstream, then it becomes amazing, and that's where collaboration really works. When it doesn't work is when everyone has their own agenda and is pushing for their own thing and trying to mess with you and sort of like being crybabies or working for their own things. That's when it doesn't work. So there's a balance to be done, and that's why you have these hierarchies, to do these checks and balances for how collaboration works. When it doesn't work, I mean, collaborations fail all the time. That's normal, actually, and it has to be able to fail, it has to be able to succeed, and it has to be able to be judged. I don't think there's any inherent rule about collaboration working or not working. I think it's more a matter of, if the vision is really strong, you'll get some great stuff. But if everyone's just like kind of phoning it in with while one person's like has this incredible vision, then it might be good, but it could have been great.
Mm-hmm. No, I get you.
Yeah, and I think that some people are more draconian with the way they manage people and time and stuff like that. But since I've become an art director, I've been really consciously focused on trying to get input from artists about how they would want to do something or how they would do it, and that took me a long time to kind of get right. But it's one of the great struggles of art directors, actually, is to be able to kind of let go of drawing it and painting it yourself, and being able to coordinate the team, sort of like a conductor in an orchestra. Instead of trying to be the soloist, you've got to kind of like bring everyone up to the same level and be able to have synergy and coordination.
Yeah. I get you. It's more trying to get them to give you their best rather than get them to give you your best. If you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Mm-hmm.
I assume that situation would probably get harder if and higher up as well came down and was like, can we change a little bit of this, a little bit of that? That everything that you've sort of collaborated and asked everyone about would have to change slightly as well. I'd assume that would make it harder communicating with the team. If I try to rephrase that. Sorry, my mind went to mush there, Daniel.
One thing you have to be careful about whenever you hire people on a team is be able to ask them if they can take criticism and make sure they're mature.
Yeah.
Some people aren't, but for the most part, I find that really good artists are mature enough to be able to course correct and be mature about the feedback you give them, as long as you give it to them in a timely manner and don't drop it to them on a Friday and tell them it's due like Monday morning. It's that's messed up. But to be able to give them time to do it, time to think about it, time to agree with you or disagree with you and tell you why. And then if you have to, go in that direction anyway, you have to say, oh, I'm sorry, you disagree with me, but we have to be able to go in this direction. And they understand. I mean, it's work for hire, so you move forward with it. Where people get again like riled or angry is usually when you're unreasonable about changes. You go behind people's backs, or you generally you wait until it's almost finished and then change your mind about it. That's the time not to do it. You want to kind of work with things in like rough iterations first and kind of get those things going before you change direction.
Mm-hmm. You basically answered what I was trying to ask in that jumbled mess.
No, I totally understand what you're saying. And it's a delicate thing. At first it's hard to be able to walk up to an artist and tell them to change something, but you realize real quickly that if you're in lockstep, if you're in synergy, and if the person you're talking to is a mature artist who's actually good at their job, they're not going to have a problem with making changes, as long as, like I said, you don't drop it to them on a Friday night before they have to go to bed and tell them it's too much, like Saturday morning or something like that. Yeah, and people are generally open to that kind of stuff. They want to do a good job. They want to have their stuff, collected. And if stuff gets cut, it's painful. I mean, there are more, like, I call them like dead babies, because that's your idea is your baby, and they kill it. So there are more, so many more dead babies in Soul Reaver than you can even imagine. Like, just stuff that we wanted to put in there. Some stuff we saved for the next game, and some stuff we just weren't able to put in. So, I mean, if you can imagine, we did all the audio for the original ending of the game, which was to kill Kain. Yeah, and we trashed it, and we said, nope, this isn't going to happen. So, which is fine.
I'm glad it didn't go that direction, to be fair. But
still. Yeah, I mean, I think that we painted Kain as a pretty much a not one-dimensional, basically like just a traditional kind of bad guy. Mm-hmm. And then we realized, no, he's not. He's a good guy, and that was amazing to be able to explore that space and be able to change that point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, that's... But forgive my language, he's still a bit of a dick.
Oh, he's supposed to be. No, I mean, that's the kind of the appeal. I mean, look, imagine if you were given immortality and vampiric power and all that kind of stuff, how much of a, altruistic person would you be versus how much you can take control versus how much would you just plot an empire? At some point, he's got the same kind of mentality as any billionaire has. It's like, I'm just going to shape the world because I have the power to do it. Mm-hmm. And literally, Kain had the power to look into the time stream, not being a time streamer, and go the long route and watch every single scenario for his empire unfold over millennia. Basically, he would sit there like watching TV almost, and just spend all this time watching what the different time stream outcomes would be before he found one where when Raziel was created, there was just static. There was nothing. There was no predicted thing. And that's where he was like, oh shit, this is the edge of the coin. This is where I can change everything.
I love that quote, the edge of the coin. That's one of my favorite. When he's
that's a great line.
The pillars with Raziel, and he says, suppose you throw a coin enough times, and suppose one day it lands on its edge. Still one of the greatest quotes to actually explain the story of the series.
Yeah. No, it's been a lot of fun to work through that as well. And just when I explain that to people, because I don't think some people realize it, that, Kain's not a time streamer, but he just went the long way around and watched every single iteration instead of having it like magically appear to him as like a vision. He actually went in there using Mobius's machines and figured it out over millennia because he had time to do it because he's a vampire. That's why he said, as a man, I would never be able to understand these things because he wouldn't have time. He would die of old age. But as a vampire, you're immortal. You got time. Go do whatever you want. So you can be a dick, especially when people are like worrying about like what's going to happen tomorrow or what their hairstyles are like. And you've got the long game in your head. You're figuring out like what's going to happen in 100 years or 1,000 years. That things become real trivial real quick, and so you can be a dick. You can cut people down. You can that there are other people out there. So hurting the population a little bit or squeezing a population to give you what you want in the long run is better for everybody. So I don't know how much of a nice guy you're going to be because of that.
It saddens me. Like, there's a lot of great video games out there these days with great characters, with great motivations and stories, but none that have even, in my opinion, especially, have come close to the way that Legacy of Kain was written, with Raziel and Kain's motivations, even Mobius's motivations. They're all just written so perfectly that I don't know what's going to beat it.
Yeah, it's tough because we were able, like I said, because of the medium at the time, it kind of put the onus on us to be able to paint a rich story with what we could, and that was like the audio and the story, and to be able to create layered and nuanced storylines that actually intertwined in different ways. And so to be able to to assume intelligence on the listener and the viewer, and be able to say like, look, I'm not going to baby step and spell this out for you. I'm going to actually take the time, give it to you in almost like in poetry, and let you figure it out. Mm-hmm. And that's why people love it, because like I think over time they kind of figured out and go, oh yeah, that's what that meant, or that's what that goes like, and I still have people who come up to me and say like that, I was too young to really understand it back then, but when I played it again, I really understood what was going on and the nuances of his words. And that's what I think, is great about the game, is just assumed intelligence on the player, because, it doesn't matter what age you are. I've had people come up to me at 12 or 13 who understand it just as well as people who are like in their 30s or 40s, because they, when you're young, you read a lot, and so you have a greater understanding, and that's, I read The Hobbit in 3rd grade, 4th grade, so basically, it's you can understand complex things. It's not. I think people forget that you can understand some really complex stuff and be able to pick up on the nuances pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Actually, speaking of doing it when I was young, like I've replayed the series at multiple points in my life, and I've had different takeaways each time, which I think is a testament to that kind of depth of character you're talking about. Which does lead me to a question. At this point in your life, who do you think you identify with more, Kain or Raziel?
Oh, that's tough. Yeah, no, it is really tough. I think at this point in my life, I identify more with Kain. Simply because Raziel, his point of view kept on changing based on the things he learned. Mm-hmm. So he was an absolute zealot for every single thing that he believed in at the time he believed it. And he was open enough to change it, and then he would become an absolute zealot in the other direction. I always thought that was the great irony of Raziel. He's the only one with true 100% free will, and yet he's the easiest to manipulate. Yeah, that was the saddest thing about it, was, you know, you would have to have the time to be able to encounter like the life experiences you had and be able to absorb it. But half of Raziel's experience was erased when he became a vampire. Yeah, right. As you know, his Seraphon self didn't remember any of that stuff. So, you know, part of the advantages of living so long is, you know, you get experiences and things like that. But once you get into the vampire section of Raziel's life, his experiences were completely different. They were based a lot more on conquest and, you know, clan politics and those kinds of things. And I think Kain was the only one who had the really, really big umbrella, long view of how everything is supposed to work, and was willing to make the sacrifices to his friends, to things he cared about, in order to get what he wanted, and which is basically, you know, a chance to basically get out of the curse he was under. Because everything Kain created, including Kain himself, was cursed to become a mutation, right? So he understood that, and he took advantage of it in some ways. He was able to actually mutate himself, and with his own ego, be able to make himself more like a golden god kind of thing. But that was one of the cool things out of this. I think Kain, he understands it more than anything else, and, you know, he understood how to play the game and how to manipulate it, and he did it over time. He did it the long way around. He didn't take any shortcuts. Yeah, he took the long approach. I think that the way I don't know how much you agree with the sentiment, and I'd actually be curious to get your input, but the way I had it described to me by a friend of mine a couple of years ago was, as the difference between the two, was Kain was someone who did the right things for the wrong reasons, and Raziel was someone that did the wrong things for the right reasons. I sort of agree with that. I think Kain's doing what any of us would do given the circumstances, you know. Oh, 100% behave like that. If you're stabbed through the back and killed and suddenly turned into a vampire, you know, you're gonna have a different outlook on life. You just are. It's just gonna be, you know, especially if you're wealthy and you're doing pretty well in life and things are going pretty well on this track, and that's all taken away from you. And then you realize that there's this huge game with people manipulating you from all sides, and you're like, I just don't want to play. And, you know, so I think he does. I don't know how to say the wrong reasons, because the reasons are your own. You know, it's like anything else, it's deeply personal. Like I said, I just identify with Kain more now because I think he knew what the world needed. He knew what to do, and he took the time to find out what to do. But it was totally super painful. I mean, he had to kill his friend. He had to throw his friend into the abyss. He had to destroy like his entire empire. Let it go into ruin, and basically figure out, all gambling on the fact that where there was static in the timeline, he could manipulate it to his advantage. And, you know, he wouldn't. And he knew Raziel was absolutely zealous in whatever he believed. So he couldn't just lay it out for him and say, this is how everything works. You know, because it's too difficult to explain with anybody being able to believe you, because you could explain something to someone the entire way through about how they're supposed to live their lives, but they could still rebel or change their mind, or, you know, and he's not going to take that chance. So it's that kind of thing. I think, you know, he does the wrong and the right things for the wrong and the right reasons. Like it's hard to say. It's more nuanced to me than that simple explanation, but I do understand what you're saying, and in general, I can kind of go with that.
I mean, and choosing to be Raziel or Kain, another deciding factor is, I mean, who wouldn't want to sound like Simon Templeman? Holy hell, that man's got a voice on him.
Oh, there is that too.
That man can do gravitas, let me tell you.
Oh yeah, like, You can every time I play a game and I've not read the cast in it and Simon's in it, I can always point him out straight away.
Oh, yeah.
There he is. Sometimes it's harder with Michael because you watch cartoons like the Rugrats and the Transformers, and then you sort of have to look into it and go, "Holy crap, that was Michael!"
yeah. Like Swoop was Michael. But I think like Mass Effect, I was watching that, and the ambassador, was one of the generals was Simon, and I was like, oh, there's Simon. I know that voice anywhere. But yeah, again, you're absolutely right. When you wouldn't think that Prowl and Duke and Swoop are all the same voice. That's who they are. And there's a bunch of stuff that we couldn't put on the audio for the end of the game, where they were doing their voices from other shows, but because of copyright issues, we couldn't record it and put it on there. We have it though, or somebody has it. But he was actually I think one of the actresses that was on there was on Snorks with him. So she was calling him All-Star, and he was talking to her, and I was like, oh my god, it's Snorks. One of the guys was I just can't remember his name. He plays Grimlock on Transformers. He was doing his Grimlock voice, and we couldn't show it. And it's too bad because they're doing all these crazy jokes. It was hilarious.
Oh man, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
I want to ask something. We've seen on your forum and your website you'd put up how you wanted you asked how the fans would have wanted the series to either continue or end. We want to direct that question right back at you. How do you think it would have went after Defiance if you'd continued the series?
Okay, so I've kind of documented this before a couple of times, but I wanted to have it where Kain would go back to the Back to the Future Soul area, which is my favorite era anyway, kind of City of Lost Children kind of vibe area. And part of it would be where he would start rebuilding the circle, and you'd find part of the thought was that maybe he could find a way to find or to start creating purified vampires, or to find them and purify them using the Reaver in a way that wasn't used before. That something has changed fundamentally with the Reaver, and you can actually purify cursed vampires. Remember, everything that Kain ever created, all of his grandchildren, great-grandchildren, they're all cursed to become mutants. So he could cure them of that curse, and then and then they would slowly start emerging as one of the members of the circle and rebuild one of the pillars. At the same time, I want to have a part of the game where Kain would be banished without the Reaver and go into the Hilden realm and be stuck inside of the city of the Hilden. And you would actually play two different characters. You play one of the vampires trying to rebuild the circle, and Kain without the Reaver, because the only thing that can really kill him is the Reaver. And if you can't put the lock and key on the other side of the jail, but you put Kain in the jail, and you have him actually experience what it is, what the Hilden are actually like. And my idea was that they're all super techno freaks, like science without morality. And that the realm they're in is the demon realm. And so the way I designed it was that the demon realm would be this thing that warps you constantly. So if you live in this realm, your skin will warp, your face will warp, everything will warp around you. But because they use technology, they have to create these fields that actually hold it back. But the only power source they have are other Hilden. So they basically use humans, like Hilden sacrifices, basically to become basically batteries for these things. And so the noble people would live in the center where they're safe, and the less fortunate ones would live on the outskirts where the shield's getting weaker and kind of encroaching in on them. And they would sacrifice, every few generations they'd sacrifice a few of their kind as batteries, as some would fail. But some would, if you imagine this one guy's job is to be a door. He'd be injected into this machine that would make him a door. And they would also create conquests out of the inhabitants of the demon realm, like the gray demons and stuff like that, and start injecting them with technology and have machines they could use to possess them, and then send them across the other side once they find weak things in the pillar. They can't cross over themselves, but they can send their emissaries across. So the idea of the possession thing would be like giant machines that would be hooked up to a series of people that would actually be using their willpower to overpower the mind of a creature in the material world. So when you see the demons, the gray demons and stuff like that, with their kind of crazy pinsters and the kind of weird machines inside of them, the reason they're like that is because the Hilden engineered them that way. They basically, took the demons, captured them, injected them with all this technology, and sent them across, and possessed them. So that's why they can talk to you sometimes they can't, because sometimes they're possessed and sometimes they're just set free.
Yeah, sometimes it's just an automaton.
Yeah, so Kane's idea would be to find someone there who would actually be sympathetic to, trying to actually live with that realm and actually used ancient vampire techniques, which are in tune with nature. They're trying to find a way to synergize their race with that plane so they wouldn't have to constantly sacrifice people to make that world. But it's blasphemy. Using vampiric technology is blasphemy among the Hilden. So it's the kind of thing where he would find this like scientist, and he would actually be working towards using ancient vampire techniques to try and find synergy with the world. But again, that'd be considered blasphemous, and he would be like, become an outcast, or eventually, they would try to murder him. So Kain would actually have a motivation to actually help this guy come to rise to power, find his way out of that realm and kind of get back. And it also would be a good way to depower Kain from the godlike status he is in the material world and slowly start building him back up again. Because the biggest problem we ever have is that every time you finish a game, you're a nuclear weapon on wheels. You have all your abilities, all your powers. How do you take that away, right? It's usually some crappy thing where they get depowered. And that's how
you trip over a pavement or something and drop them.
Yeah, pretty much. I lost my powers. Oh my gosh. And so having Kain go there would be a way to strip him of his powers and the Reaver for a time, have him come back, and then I have like the whole thing written up where how that would converge with the storyline of the vampire trying to build up a new circle and, help to either banish or destroy part of the Hilden. So it was actually really like, that was the way I was seeing it. And that's why I wanted to kind of write a comic book about it and stuff like that. I'm still thinking about doing it, or either a comic book or some kind of writing up a treatise for a new game or something like that, and maybe
I would Well, I mean, I would read or buy whatever comes out from it, to be fair, but
yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing right now. That's what I'm toying with next, is basically trying to figure out like ways to do that in a way that plays honor to the original series, but actually takes it in a kind of a new direction and kind of gives it fresh kind of wheels on this things, because there's so much you can do with with this storyline and go with it and stuff like that. And in fact, I was even having the new vampire be a time streamer and actually encounter Mobius, and how manipulative Mobius is. So that'd be kind of an interesting take on how that would all work.
2 seconds. My door just rang. I will be back.
Yeah.
Speaking of games that were paying homage, as you were saying there, you did some art stuff for the multiplayer game Nosgoth, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I did consulting for them. They basically came in and asked me some questions about like how some of the stuff would come together. By the time they got to me, they had already made some really, what I would say, like kind of weird decisions about the game. Calling the Doomahim the Reavers was weird to me. It kind of felt like it was throwing things off.
Yeah.
And then having the Raziel's wings, like, in their traditional location as opposed to like lower on the back where they're supposed to be. Little things like that, where like telling like, hey, can you change this? And they're like, no, it's too late. I'm like, okay, well, let me show you how this would work, And then I would kind of give them backstory too for things like the Malkaya. Whenever they're around, I'm like, being able, falling apart wasn't seen to them as a curse. Falling apart and being able to piece themselves back together off other living things was seen as an advantage. Seen as like a cosmetic advantage as well. If you don't like your face, staple someone else's face to it, and it'll work. And it's like you can take someone else's abilities. If they were like buff arms, you could take their arms and staple them on you, and you'd have their arms. So, and it was also seen as kind of a gothic display of pain. They could show how much pain they could take. And one good example of this in another movie was in Blade 2, when he walks into the bar. There's another vampire that has its spine splayed. Yeah. They've splayed his spine, and they basically are flaying it. But he's just sitting there like, whatever. You guys, it's just we're engraving my spine. And I think that's cool. That shows like you're nearly indestructible. Mm-hmm. You could flay your arm open, carve your name into your forearm bones, and then just let it heal, and it'll be fine, and you'll know it's there. It's like, or you could like you could embed something into your skin, let it heal around that, and have that. And it's gonna hurt, but you can take it. It's not gonna kill you. You're nigh indestructible. Drink enough blood, and you can do whatever you want. So it was kind of like being able to relay that to Nosgoth and being able to tell them like the backstory about how I believed they would work and what I believed they would do at that time. That was most useful, I think, to both of us. It was nice for me to be able to kind of be able to relay the information I had in my head about the clans, and it was nice for them to be able to act on it with a little bit more information and kind of come up with better designs. I think the later designs were like a lot closer to the original, being like a next generation version of the original vampires.
I remember specifically, the only one I remember is the second Turelium design they released out with the ears being a lot closer to how like we see Tyrell in Defiance, and that's how I always pictured how his kin would be like before the evolution completely set in. Like you see them in Soul Reaver 1, like the big bad ears and everything, they're so cool looking. When that got released in Nosgoth, I was like, there you go, you have it, you have everything.
That was one of the things that I had with them. I'm like, look, you guys rig bones into the ears and stuff like that. Let's get these bigger. I basically gave them a lot of visual notes and kind of give them feedback on designs, just to kind of allow them to, come up with the designs themselves. I didn't design any of that stuff. I kind of just gave feedback on it. But as a consultant, just being able to say like, hey, that's the way I would do it if I was working on this game. That's what we did when we were working on it. Kind of helped them to make really much stronger, closer decisions to what the fans wanted. And I think that was important, because I think some people don't necessarily have all the information, and that's natural. The game was like 20 years ago, and now it's like it's the kind of thing where if you don't have that kind of guidance or that kind of die-hardness, if you're just coming into it fresh, all you can do is kind of look at the original designs and say, like, okay, I think it's something like this. If you don't quite get it, then you're going to be actually pretty far off, because you won't understand the motivations behind everything.
Yeah,
and that's really important to do.
I think because we were trying to keep it for an hour, so we got 10 minutes. Finn wanted to ask you some Tomb Raider stuff.
Oh yeah, there was a brief Tomb Raider question actually. So as I mentioned before, I'm an archaeology student, so this is a debate that came up in professional circles, but also one I have heard about. So I don't know if you're aware of one of the controversies surrounding the most recent Tomb Raider reboot, but there has been some attempt to sort of maintain her role as a strong female character, as well as address certain ethical questions about whether it's okay to just randomly invade other people's tombs and nick their stuff.
Sure.
Since I know you were involved in Tomb Raider Legends and Tomb Raider... Oh, God, I'm blanking on the name now. I do apologize. Thank you. I want to know, do you think those two things are reconcilable with the character design, or do you think it's one that's just... It's a 90s idea kind of thing?
Well, I mean, not calling it Tomb Raider and not raiding tombs sure would be boring, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I know. I don't know what she would be.
Yeah,
Due process Raider?
One thing to know about original Tomb Raider was originally Lara was written as a villain in terms of like the way that she was designed. She was designed as a villain. I mean, she walks into tombs with guns and stealing artifacts, and she has a British accent, and she's like all haughty. I mean, originally from the original design, she was designed as a villain. You can ask Toby about this too. That's the way she was originally set up. So in some ways, she didn't care about some of. I mean, she understood this is an important artifact, and they softened her character and that kind of stuff. But originally, she was supposed to go in there and do it, get what she wanted out of it, as almost a mercenary. So I think there's a kind of understanding that if you're going to be reverent for the tombs that you're going into and breaking into stuff, I mean, it's kind of comes from the 40s, right? From the when you have that kind of like, hey, it's adventure. Let's go into a tomb that you've never seen before, and let's figure things out. Let's figure out how this thing works and unlock it. And some people have the insatiable thirst for unlocking things and finding knowledge and being able to, figure out where the extra room was in the pharaoh's tomb, that hypothetically was supposed to be there. Now they figured out that it actually is there, and it's like, I think that it's as reconcilable as the story allows it to be, because you can't have a completely altruistic person breaking into tombs. It's just not going to happen. They would seal it off and say no one can go in. You have to have that kind of supernatural element as well. I think that's part of the Indiana Jones nature of it. I mean, is Indy a bad guy for doing that stuff? I mean, that's the same question, right? So, because it's and is Nathan Drake? So it is the question: is finding these lost places something we're supposed to be doing? And if so, do we catalog it and just kind of leave it where it is? Do we, raid it, take it apart bit by bit, and destroy it essentially, or do we find something in between? I mean, that's during the course of the pursuit of human knowledge. We've done some crazy stuff. We've done some, raiding and terrible things, but it's increased the general knowledge of the entire populace. So, if something is a dark secret that's never known, does that help the human species as a whole move forward, or do they learn something about that? And that's something I think that it's an existential question. It's not a question supposed to be answered here in this, by you or me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I understand.
What do you believe is correct? Is it better to serve the populace of the human race, or is it better to let these individual secrets be held by their individual civilizations and be lost in time? And because it's sort of what Kain is answering too. Does Kain serve himself and just with his knowledge become the all-powerful god that he wants to be? He kind of went down that path for a time and basically got bored of it. He looked in the future, saw that it was going to fall apart anyway, and decided to serve all of Nosgoth in a way that kind of fit with his way of doing things.
I also kind of like that Kain is no worse than the god that is currently being the god.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think that god's even worse because the elder god.
I'd agree.
Is currently, he's devouring souls and keeping them from, being recycled properly. So it's kind of thing where he's at least trying to restore the balance of the pillars. He's at least trying to become what he's supposed to be, and figuring out what that is, and whether that is not in subservience to humans, but it's certainly, that doesn't have to be, we are the predators and you're the prey kind of thing either. I think there's something for him to learn. I think that's why I wanted to put him in the Hilden realm for a while, and have him come out with a different perspective on the conflict, his life, his opponents, and to learn something about that along the way. And then for the other vampire to learn about the true balance of Nosgoth and the true meaning of the responsibility of being a Pillar's Guardian is that you're looking out for the welfare of the entire world, and what that means, and you have to sacrifice to do that, because you can't simply say I'm out for the world and not have any personal sacrifices along the way. It's going to ask a lot of you. And I think that's an important thing to think about with any kind of service that you have, whether you choose to be altruistic or whether you choose to be really aggressive. It just goes to what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to do to make the world move the way you want it to.
That was a really good answer.
Yeah, that was a fantastic answer.
Briefly, when you were talking there about the conflicts of Kain and humans, there's this song I used to listen to that has lyrics in it. It's called Parasite God by Mortis, and I think it fits Kain's situation really well. And the lyrics are essentially, "You love your parasite god, yet you crucify me." And I always thought that clicked quite well, especially when the story sort of develops and Kain begins to learn about the cycle of what the humans worship and whatnot. I always thought.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I think that's an important thing to think about. Is when you have what is the nature of the thing you're worshiping, right? What is the nature of the thing you are holding in such high esteem? And if the avatar comes down and you don't recognize it, you'll just crucify it anyway, or you'll destroy it. If you don't agree with it, if it takes you out of your personal comfort zone or takes away from the wealth that you have. Mm-hmm. So it's a good statement on human nature, to be honest.
Yeah.
We worship the most when we're in the most trouble. When you're in the disaster and you're praying hard. So it just speaks to how awakened you can be to your actual higher self, and how you can find that in other people, or if that's or if you go a different direction, or if someone's manipulating you and you feel betrayed by your deity, that's a cool thing to examine too. These are all human conditions, and I think that's what I love about the video game industry, is that we get to examine the human condition, and you get to, in the most role-playest way ever, step into the shoes of someone who's actually in that situation and figure it out from there. I think that's what's wonderful about games.
Yeah. Okay. Before we finish, I want to state how Legacy of Kain, there's still such a big fan base for it, yourself and ourselves included, and there's people always talking about it daily. I see never-ending support coming through it, signing petitions and stuff. Is there anything that you would like to say to them?
Yeah, thanks for all the support. That's amazing. I think that I think the Legacy of Kain fans are the best, because the Soul Reaver Legacy of Kain fans are the best because they're thoughtful, they're creative, they're motivated, they have very similar senses of humor for everybody I've met. It's hilarious. We get the same references, we read the same books, we're all Tolkienites and things like that, and Star Trek fans and stuff like that, because all that stuff, we threw it in that game. We threw all those parallels in that game. Everything that I love about weapon creation, everything I love about architecture, everything I love about storytelling. We threw it all in that game. We didn't hold back. Including right down to the UI. There's a I think pretty well-known story now about how I created the user interface for that game with the statues coming to life and moving and stuff like that, and how we didn't have to do that, and we didn't have time to do that, but we wanted to put the extra time in to make that work. So I think if you guys keep talking loud enough, I'm sure there's going to be something that will happen with it, because fans are doing stuff already in Unreal. It's great. I'm thinking about doing a comic book. I'm thinking about doing some storyline stuff as well. If I find out there's support for that, I will definitely move forward with it. I've just been kind of busy working at Sony,
yeah.
But it's God of War is done. Phew, Spider-Man's done.
Congrats on both of those, by the way. Outstanding games.
Yeah, both games I enjoyed.
Yay,
although I haven't played Spider-Man yet, but God of War I enjoyed.
I can't stop playing God of War. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, great. And some of the people who worked at Story worked on God of War. Stefan and Isabel, who were environment artists, both worked with me on Soul Reaver, and they're over there now, and they're environment artists, and they're fantastic. And it's great to see them, making another awesome hit as well. So it's fantastic for everybody. But if there's support, good stuff will happen. I definitely, like I said, I've thought a lot about the storyline, and I've been wanting to make something for the fans as well, and to do something for them. In fact, I was, just contemplating ideas about things to try, either a Patreon or a Twitch channel or something like that. And if I get good feedback about it, then I'll move forward with it. The only problem is, just the amount of time I can dedicate to it, being, working in the game industry full time as well. But hopefully that will, work itself out, and I'll be able to do some stuff like that. I would love to be able to contribute again to more of this kind of stuff. Again, it never left me as an artist. It never went away. It was always in my head. I'm always thinking about, even when I walk my dog, I'm thinking about storylines and things to try. So it's just something that I want to hopefully be more involved in the coming year.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Daniel Cabuco. Now, time may fade legend, but this legend will not fade. I hope that.
Appreciate it, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. I'd love to have you back on another day as well.
Sure, yeah, we can discuss Buffy or whatever,
Yes, I'd love to get into that too, and I meant to bring that up. Finn, thanks for joining us with this as well.
Thanks, Finn.
No problem. Anytime.
It was a blast talking to you both, gents. That was Chatting with Daniel Cabuco. You can find his social media and website portfolio links in the description below. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you next time.